Hey guys, I'm Mark Will, and in this video I'm going to cover 3 points from the recent AMA Ask Me About Anything that Steven and the Ashes of Creation team covered last week on Twitch. The first one, I'm just going to jump right into this, guys. Going to keep this video short and sweet. I tend to run really long. Before I forget, if you are liking the content, like the videos, want to see more of this stuff, I definitely appreciate all the likes, follows, comments, all that fun stuff. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you guys just like to lurk, I'm a lurker too. Don't feel bad about it. But if you'd like to promote more of this content and see me keep pumping it out, don't feel shy. All right, first one, guys, I'm going to jump right into it. Like I said, is the Divine Node. So I'm not going to cover all the questions, just the 3 aspects that I thought kind of stood out to me. The Divine Node superpower potentially being a Catacombs or Labyrinth PvE style dungeon crawler. Could be really cool. Could be awesome. I don't have any main opposition to it. My only consideration here, guys, is that actually 2 things. So one, it might segment some of the population in Vera. So the PvE, what you catastrophic kind of flaw to it would be, this isn't a concern of mine, I'll explain why, but if you put all your PvE players underground, all your PvP players above ground, you're not really having a mixing MMO. You want to keep those environments together. So as long as the catacombs weren't like completely segmenting away and creating a wall between the 2 different play styles, I'm perfectly okay with it. I don't have a problem with it. And I think even if it got a little bit out of hand, you could always scale that back by putting more rewards above ground and less rewards and achievements underground, and that would force more of the players that were really wanting to sought after those achievements and rewards to come back and mingle with the populace, so to speak. So I don't have a major problem with that aspect. The question I have regarding it, and again, it would be an underground catacomb network is what he kind of floated as the idea they're kicking around internally, is that, again, it sounded like an idea and a concept that they were discussing. It didn't sound like anything that was concrete, and maybe it was, they have a rough draft of it, an outline, and some base modeling already in place. My concern would be the time and process. It has nothing to do with the idea itself. I think the idea itself is fantastic, amazing. Like a lot of things that Ashes does and the Intrepidity does and Steve, positions towards, is they shoot for the moon. So they absolutely shoot for the moon. They put such a high bar for themselves, and they have such a high bar on quality that they're trying to achieve, that my only concern really is just time and process. I think that's a little bit optimistic, again, mainly because the grand scope of the game is trying to achieve. This just has such a large development time, and it takes a long time to develop games. And it's kind of like plate management. It's kind of like watching a very hungry 15-year-old version of myself walking up to a Sizzler buffet. I mean, that plate was just stacked triple high. How much bacon bits, shrimp, cocktails can I stack on this plate? It was going up to the ceiling, and of course I couldn't eat it all, but it sure looked good. So that's what you want to avoid, is the 15-year-old Lark Will plate management, and that's a random analogy, but for the Intrepid team, really is just not putting too many grand ideas on your plate to where the game can't get launched, because you're trying to put all of these expansions into the game on launch, and that is just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing the timetable further back and back and back. So I would prefer a simpler superpower that they could code rather than this very extensive network, and that might require a large scale development timetable in the game to introduce, to connect all the Metro node Divine nodes to, and actually it would just be connecting all the Divine nodes within a zone of influence. And I don't know exactly how that would play out and what their network will look like, but they can't control which one's going to be the Metro, so they would have to just connect them all. And I think it would be really awesome for PvE players to have a mode of content in the game like that, and I'm not trying to discourage it from coming to the game at some point. It almost seems like scope creep to me. And again, if it's not already outlined and already a draft form, encoding and all that stuff, I would, again, it's just my opinion. I'm not a game developer, so it's not really for me to say, but just as a fan that's hoping this game comes out before 2024, 2025, it seems like scope creep if you are adding large-scale systems like that, potentially to a superpower, where a more simpler idea would probably be acceptable by the fans, and maybe at some point you could expand on that in a different form, because I think it is a good idea to give. They didn't say whether it would be instants or not. I get the feeling it was, but those were just my thoughts, guys. So a little bit of timetable management was my only real concern. I think it's an awesome idea, and if it came to the game, I would applaud it. All right, number 2, Bard formations. I guess I'm going to go to things that I had a little bit more concerns with. Number 3 is purely positive, I promise. Number 2, Bard formations. This is the one I'm not really too much of a fan for, guys. I'm just going to be honest. Steven did float during the AMA that one idea they were kicking around was that they might incorporate some form of Bard formations with the skills they cast for their team. So, and I'm going to be making up some language here. This is not anything that Steven said himself. He just said Bard or team formation in order to get a buff or an improved buff based on standing in a certain formation to unlock the ability itself. All right, so is that going to be an octagram, a pentagram? What shape is this going to be? How are you going to incorporate that? Is it going to be pre-battle? What would the interval and the skill look like? And in a nutshell, I'd be worried about making it tedious. I'd be worried about how that would incorporate into a PvP environment where you're doing castle sieges with 250 plus players on each side. How are you going to have these formations make any sense during combat that is so chaotic, messy, and strewn about like that? Open world PvP where it's not planned or scripted, and you're out of formation because you're set upon by outlaws or brigands that are trying to rob you. You don't have time to stand in a formation. So I don't know. I tend to think that has a very niche skill set to either be, okay, it has like a 10-minute or 30-minute lasting on the benefit, and you can do it before a battle. But if you're doing it before a battle, like before a boss fight or before a castle siege, why do you have to stand in formation? Why not just make it proximity based? So I'm not a fan of, I don't want to be a dancing bear or ballerina when I'm playing. And if it felt like really tedious, I probably wouldn't want to play with bards. And I was actually thinking about rolling a bard just to do something different in an MMO. But if it felt like very tedious play, or if I was like leading a dance troupe to jump into formations, I would be instantly turned off by that. I would have no interest in it. And there's all sorts of personalities that play these games, guys. So I'm not trying to say it'd be crap or anything like that. I'm just saying it wouldn't be for me. But there's tons of different personalities and play styles that enjoy MMOs. It might be completely somebody's jam. They might love that stuff to death. It might have been their favorite part of the MA. But just from my standpoint, like, I wouldn't necessarily even want to group with a bard if I had to jump into these formations every 2 minutes during combat. That would annoy me. So I would rather see a proximity base. I know they're trying to come up with a unique way to make it appeal to players and have the class stand out in a special way. So they're probably thinking about ideas of how to incorporate that, what they can come up with that's unique and hasn't been done before. I kind of lean towards more of like having a little horn that you blow, like a proximity based, and it would give a buff to your team, or else you walk in front and give some speech and it would give a buff to your team, or you could shout like cheers from behind, stuff like that. I don't know. I know I heard Steven talk about, so bards aren't always just a musical. They could be oration, storytelling, those kind of things. So one idea that I had was maybe giving a bard skill tree, maybe not all trees. Steven did say it would still be a combat class. It wouldn't just be a pure support that doesn't have weapons. They'd actually be in combat. But one thought I have is that maybe you could have the bard class be more of like a spy class or a spy tree, where they're doing more social, like change abilities, where they could influence NPCs to either get improved costs, or else they can influence NPCs to have them be hostile towards a certain guild or player name, and do things like that, to where maybe they could turn AI mobs from hostile to passive, so that way their team could get on to different sections of the dungeon faster, maybe sing some notes, or talk soothingly, I don't know, and put them asleep. I don't know, pick something. But I think more like utility things would be kind of cool, and I'm sure they're gonna have a lot of abilities like some element of that in the game. But I guess what I'm getting at is I would like to have one character class in the game, even if it was just one out of 64. that was a non-combat class where they had different, like maybe artisan skills. Maybe like it'd be kind of cool to me just to have a class that really excelled in artisanry, and they just had certain things they did that either like boosted gathering or boosted crafting output or boosted the production and the final result, like maybe the rarity or something. I don't know. Like there's just different things you can come up with there. But I always liked, there was different games I've played in the past, not MMOs, but they just had certain classes that were not combat oriented. And I'd actually be open to something like that, even for the Bard class, where maybe it was like it could go down a hybrid tree, or else it also could go down like more of an artisan tree. And I think that would be interesting just to have. Regardless, be a class that would open itself up to different play styles, which I think would be really interesting. I don't know if I'd play it, but I think it'd be really neat to have in the game. Something that wasn't just, I know I think what Steven's trying to avoid is just having a buff bot, where it's just the bot in the background and there's a 10% buff to your damage, And then I think they're trying to avoid that and make it stand out. All right, number 3 is node hotspots, starting zones. This was my favorite one, actually. I know a lot of people were really excited about the divine node catacombs and labyrinth styles. What my guild was saying, my guild was jumping for joy. They were so excited for the divine node announcement. I'm more of a PvP player. Not usually the bad guy, but I like PvP combat and the large scale fights. I just can't tell you how excited I am for that. If they run smooth and there's no lag, like Bartik has been telling me, and I've seen the videos, I've watched them all. They look really good. But if those run smooth, I'd be so excited to do those fights, win or lose. I don't care. I just want to jump in and join the fray. I can't wait to do that. But a lot of players in my group guild were very, very excited for the divine node PvE content. But personally, my favorite of the MMA, the AMA, Ask Me Anything, was I really liked what Steven mentioned. I think the reason why I'm doing this video is really just to talk about this. A lot of content creators have talked on the MMA. I did it again. The AMA, but they didn't emphasize this point. Even when they address this question, they focus on different statement that Steven said and weren't focusing on this. And I'm sure I've missed other content creators talk about this, but from the ones I watched, they missed this. I thought it was the key point, besides the divine node concept. Out of everything else that was discussed, I thought this might have been the number one game mechanic for longevity of the game that would be a strong point of making this game very successful, that being Ashes of Creation long term. And that is the starting nodes as part of a heat map of when players launch into a game, they're launching into the starting nodes. And they're not starting nodes, they're just starting areas, but they happen to be where everyone's coming into. But the node-based system is going to likely have these areas become the metropolises or level 5, level 6 nodes growth, because that's where everyone's pouring in to do their experience. And more likely than not, that's those 5 or 6 spawn points where everyone comes into the world of Arahat are going to become the first big cities and nodes and metropolises that the world has. Whether or not they stay that way is a different story, but still, all those players are probably just going to go over to an adjacent node. They're going to become a level 5 very quickly too, from spillover. And even if it gets knocked down, those other level 5 nodes, one of them become a level 6. So there'll be a lot of activity really close by. But I think it's going to provide longevity for the game. And exactly as Steven said, I think it was an undersold point that needs to be emphasized by the content creator community, not even just by myself, but by much larger brands than I that are in this game. They should be emphasizing this point, and they should go back through and listen to it because it's very important. At least in my mind. A lot of games where you start out and you play it, whether it's World of Warcraft, ESO, you name it, Final Fantasy 14, I've played them all. You start out, and a lot of these games, I've come into it after the game's already been out for a year or 6 months or so. All the players that started out when the game's launched, they move through the different zones and maps, and before you know it, they're off your screen. And the players that are starting a year later are like, where's everybody? And that's because they're all in the new expansions, the new maps, the new zones. You don't have guides, you don't have mentors. It's hard to join guilds, learn the game. It's very much self-taught and just roaming around. It's kind of an adventure, but it's not that incorporating MMO feel. The MMO skill is really when you're close by with a lot of other players that are around your level, hub of activity, and you're all having a blast together doing similar activities and running around in different directions, but you're all kind of in the same zone. And that's what it's going to be so great about Ashes of Creation, is that when all the new players are coming in, they're going to be immediately immersed with all the veteran players who are still at those zones. That's their home. That's where they're guarding. That's where they're growing. That's where they're expanding. All their activity, all the things they're doing are there, right next to where a brand new player are coming in. Even if you're an existing player, you're launching an alt together. How awesome would that be to do it as a main hub of activity? You don't have to play by yourself for the first 30 to 50 levels of the game until you're with all the other endgame players and are doing similar content in the same zones they are. That's like a month or two of progress where it's not wasted and you're actually in a vibrant community from day one. And that's going to be a really strong way that Ashes of Creation is going to maintain and sustain traction with all the other players that are coming on, joining the game, whether it's the new server or one of the older servers post-launch of the game. And I think Steven's brilliant on that with coming up with the idea. I'm pretty sure he said that he did come up with the idea, and it's very understated, but it's a simple idea. The node system, not necessarily so simple, but having the nodes be the hub of activities and grow large, so where there's activity there and it's going to be maintained when new players start. That's relatively simple, but it's tied into a map that's kind of self-contained. And that's the other aspect I was going to mention, guys, is that a lot of times you get bored on the back end too of the end game, and you run off to these end game zones and you're by yourself, and there's no one else around because they're all on earlier content. But the node system with Vera, it's not expanded right now. Maybe it will in expansions, we don't know. But everyone, even if you're at level cap, you're still going to be in the same areas. You're still going to come back to town at the end of a day of fighting in some dungeon or whatnot, and come back to home to do your crafting, to buy stuff in town, to buy from artisans, to do all of the player stuff there, transport goods, protect caravans. All the systems of the game are all at the node. So all the players, no matter where you are in the game, how long you've been playing, are going to be coming back to that point of interest, that main hub of activity, which are the nodes. And I think that's a really strong element of what Ashes of Creation is, foundation of strength that everything else is built upon. And everyone else knows, I mean, all the content creators and everyone I heard talking about, they're in love with the nodes. But that aspect of it, of keeping the players intermixed with each other so they're not getting so stretched apart, and where the world is too big so the players aren't really seeing each other. I think that's almost a problem a lot of MMOs, is that a lot of the gameplay is so niche that most of the players are so far apart from each other, we don't interact at all. So it's almost like you might as well be playing an RPG by yourself, because the other players are gone. And if you're an endgame player, you're playing with endgame, so it probably feels a little different because you're already there, and there is a hub of core hardcore players that are doing similar content. But for almost everybody else, like 90% of the player base that isn't doing that, it doesn't have that same feeling in a lot of MMOs. But in Ashes, I think it will. There's going to be a cohesiveness to the world, and that'll make it feel much more alive because the world feels more populated. And that was like, I don't want to get this into a PvP conversation, but the node system and this centralized map and nodes of where all the activity is happening is so creative and innovative, and it's going to hit a home run. I just absolutely have full confidence if the game launches with this in place and they get it right. It's going to be an absolute grand slam. They're going to just knock it out of the park. And then PvP is really the only element. I mean, combat, bugs, PvP, those are kind of the ones that you kind of got to worry about. But I don't want to go down a different path right now. But they're doing it so right with the node system, and with players coming on board, feeling a part of the community. They're going to be able to get mentors. They're going to be able to find guilds. They're going to be able to see that really cool girl or guy walking down the street with a caravan. Looks like he's guarding a caravan. What is that? And oh my gosh, did you see the size of that weapon and what that is? Or I know they don't want oversized weapons. So did you see like the effects or the look of that weapon, that armor that he or she has? That's amazing. I can't wait to level up to get that look that way, and hopefully it's not a cosmetic, but yeah. But I think that's part of it too, is that you get to see what other players at the endgame level look and feel like, what they're doing, what activities they're running about. And I think that's fun, and it's going to be a much better way to both recruit players, power level them up, get people involved in the game, and show them the ropes and all those different things. And it's going to be good on all sides. It keeps the veteran players like feeling like the game's alive because they're seeing all the new players roll in, and then the new players get the benefit of the veteran players. So it's going to be a really healthy mix. And I think that's really understated, and it'd probably be good if other content creators, if anyone else watches this and you guys want to talk about the same aspects on your channel, like by all means. I think it's something worth putting out there as a really nice feather in the cap for Ashes of what it's going to separate it from other MMOs in the industry, in the space. It's going to be a really strong selling point in my mind. Even if players don't know it when they're playing the game or don't know why they keep coming back, it's going to be like an inherent core strength. Byproduct of this node system and the way they have it set up is that I think as long as they hit some core principles here with combat, the PvP isn't overly grief heavy. There's things to do with different player kind of interests. They're going to hit a home run with this game, guys, and it's going to grow and grow and grow. It's going to get really, really big. It's going to be a really core strength. So I'll leave there. I'm kind of droning on at this point. But that's the video, guys. I hope you like it. If you enjoy the content, again, I'm Mark Will. I'll probably put out weekly content, maybe 1 or 2 videos a week. I don't want to sprint to the finish line. This isn't a race. This is more of a journey, and definitely enjoying reading the wiki. I'll probably just put out 1 or 2 videos a week. I'll probably do one more this weekend on more of a core subject from the wiki. But that'll be kind of my pacing, guys. But if you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, comment. I appreciate you all. You guys have a great day.